Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start now. It's my pleasure today to introduce Macham Mangut, who just passed his PhD and who's going to receive his degree officially next month, he just told us. So congratulations. I'm also very happy to have Macham here with us because IFRA-Nigeria has had for a very long time a link with archaeologists. IFRA-Nigeria's director was an archaeologist himself at the beginning of the 2010s. And we all here in this room share an interest with you. So thank you and well done. Thank you for giving this paper for us. This is the last paper of our West Africa online research seminar. As you can tell, the paper has been recorded. Why do we record it? Just because we want people to be able to basically listen to it. You don't have time to be with us today. It means that we will put it online by the end of this year. It should appear on our web pages, but also on our YouTube channel. So much. Well, thank you for being with us. Today, you're going to talk about the peopling of Central Nigeria, archaeological and historical perspectives on the Just Plateau, please. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As I've been introduced, I am Macham Mangut, and you can see the title of my presentation, which is the peopling of Central Nigeria, archaeological and historical perspectives on the run, Just Plateau. I really thank IFRA for giving me this opportunity to share my work. Yes, Central Nigeria is commonly referred to as the Middle Belt. However, I prefer to use Central Nigeria because the Middle Belt as an entity has not been fully defined. There's no agreement on what exactly is the boundary of Middle Nigeria, but Central Nigeria is just, Central Nigeria as it is. However, the area of study, which is the Just Plateau, is located in this area, and as we know, Central Nigeria is a heterogeneous area made up of several ethnic groups, about 395. However, 54 of them are present in Plateau State, and now, in this part of the Just Plateau, the Just Plateau, it actually stands out in Central Nigeria because it's a highland characterized by so many hills and so many ethnic groups, as mentioned earlier. Now, some of the ethnic groups found on the Just Plateau include Birom, Ron, Fer, Mupun, and so many of them that I'm going to talk about. Now, talking of the location of study, sorry, I need to use a pointer. Okay, now this is map of Africa with Nigeria here and with the Just Plateau with the little dot. And this is a bigger map showing the Just Plateau here. Now expanding it further, you can see this is actually Plateau State, the map of Plateau State, and the Just Plateau just makes up, it covers these three locations, which are Fer, Lankan, and Darfur. Now, based on studies by Greenberg, and this has been confirmed by Ballard 1971, it says Plateau, the ethnic groups on Plateau, on the Just Plateau, are divided into two. Basically, we have the Benue Congo speakers and as well the Chadic speakers. Now, the Benue Congo speakers have been identified as of semi-Bantu origin, as suggested by Ames, that they came via the forest of Ukaridas in Taraba State, while the Chadic groups are believed to be part of Aboriginal groups that are based on mixed suggestion that were pushed out of the Lake Chad Basin sometime around between 1100 to 1350 AD. Now, this map shows some of the ethnic groups located on the Just Plateau, and the ones with the black dots shows the Benue Congo groups, while the triangle shows the Chadic groups among them. So the focus of my discussion is on the Run, which are located here around the southwestern corner of the Just Plateau. Now, and also from my work basically focuses on their migration within the Just Plateau. That's where my work focuses on. So it focuses on their movement from Fer here to Lankan, which is here the land of the Mopun speakers. And from there, it moved to Run area. So my area of study, as I mentioned earlier, is Fer, then Mopun, that's particularly in Lankan, and the Run speaking areas, that's where my study covers. Now, coming to the Run area now, as I mentioned here, this is the location of the Run area. Now, these are the several groups that make up that are found in Bokos local governments where the Run group are found. So the black dots indicates Run settlements in Bokos local government. Then we have their southern neighbors who are the Kulere, they are all Chadic speakers. Then we have another group here, which are the Mushere. So Bokos is made up of 3 major ethnic groups, and the dominant ones are the Run. However, in Run now, the focus of my PhD work was on Dafo here. That's in addition to Lankan and Fer, where they are believed to be Run of Dafo. However, this is not where the only place that archaeological work have been done on the Just Plateau. There are many other places indicated by these arrows. Another important one here is we have Butura here and Fayarun. These places are still serious archaeological work is still going on there, courtesy of the Department of Archaeology and Heritage Studies. This study is being sponsored by the department. Then we have other places that studies have been carried out in. We have Mahurum here, it's more of a preliminary survey that has been done here. We have Mangar here. We have here too, a number of archaeological works have been done. However, the focus of my discussion will be on Run, which is where my my PhD work was centered more. Now let's look at gaps in the history of the area. No, the Just Plateau has been existing for thousands of years. However, what dominates literature on the history or emergence of several groups, or what dominates literature discussions on the Just Plateau is more of spontaneous migrations of different groups into the area from the 17th century onwards. Now, in addition, most of those early writings, they focused on themes of resistance, ethnic wars, cultural and economic isolation. Now, this has left in terms of chronology, it has left a gap in the history of the area. Yeah, because we have from early archaeological works done on the Just Plateau, we have Tusim Komba that human occupation goes back to the 6th millennium, between the 6th millennium and 1st millennium BC. We have Nok that is not exactly on the Just Plateau, but it's at the southern, the western edge of the Just Plateau. However, it is believed that there were movement of people between moving up the plateau and going down. So there has been interaction between the Just Plateau and Nok area, which has, in a way, the chronology applies also to the Just Plateau. Then we have Rock, that the human occupation goes back to this period. However, after this, we don't seem to have any other information about the Just Plateau. Then suddenly we are beginning to we have so much oral traditions and early writings talking of people of the area from the 17th century. That has led to a number of questions like what has happened? Did the people suddenly disappear and then until the 17th century, then a new set of people came? Or where did the earlier population move to? And so many research questions. And this are some of the gaps that made me to go into this research. Now, expectations of this discussion, this paper tries to re-examine the existing literature and outline recent archaeological findings from Fair, Lanka, and Darfur with the aim of understanding the emergence of the Run as a people. Now, results from this analysis will give a new perspective on the peopling of not just Runland, but the Just Plateau at large. This will further show how relevant archaeology is in supplementing and in some cases, taking the leading role in the bid to having a more concise and clearer picture of human occupation on the Just Plateau. So there have been a lot of writings on the Just Plateau. Among the earliest are the 19th century writings by people such as Henrik Barth, we have Virgil Ross, and so many of them. However, the major problem with these writings is that these writers never stepped their feet on the Just Plateau. They relied on secondhand information, mostly Hausa traders that come to the plateau. However, as a result of that, they put down so many unconfirmed information. They use all sorts of racist terms in describing the people. This is followed by a local source, which is a Bauchi source, written in Hausa by the Bauchi Emirate. However, the focus of their writings, this source talks about more of the various jihad campaigns embarked by Bauchi Emirate. And it appears from their writings, they met stiff resistance on the Just Plateau. So this is just the little information that you can get about the Just Plateau from that source. Then we have 20th century European accounts. That was the period whereby colonial staff researchers coming into Nigeria, and many of them were actually came to the Just Plateau. They were able to have one-on-one contact with the people. They wrote so much about them, then, however, their writings also had a number of shortcomings, which is, it focuses as well on theories of isolated things. Now, also, they emphasize the people's mode of dressing, the use of cactus hedges for protection, the non-monetary economy, lack of markets, and absence of any concept of wage labor, which contributed to their unwillingness to work in the mines. These are some of the shortcomings of these writings. And some of these writers were able to, for the fact that they had contact with the people, they were able to write histories of some of these people, which are mainly migration histories that is pinned to the 17th century period upwards, and another challenge of these writings is that they just get a single account from the people, and it becomes the dominant account about their migration, about their origin, while there are different versions, there are variations in their traditions of origins, but they seem to ignore some of these ones. They just pick one and use it to represent the whole people's history. We also have archival sources. These are more of unpublished materials that are mainly reports on expedition, patrol, and tour, historical, ethnographic, and linguistic files, assessment and reassessment reports, and so many of them. These are very important information. However, the intent of keeping these records was not actually meant for research purpose. It was meant, to ease colonial administration. As a result, they were not able to, it was not detailed, and the information was kind of biased, and for the fact that it's not meant for research purpose, it had its own shortcoming. However, these sources are considered as primary sources, and you have been cautioned by Tampo that people using this must be really cautious of that. Then we also have ethnographic works carried out. The earliest ethnographic work carried out was by H.G. Focus about the Angas people, and in his work, he also emphasized the people's mode of dressing, the absence of centralized institution, and evidence of their evidence of their primitiveness. Now, a number of ethnographic works have also been carried out in Run area by Barbara Frank in 1978. He wrote about the Run, particularly he identified two major groups within the run. We have the Dareswe, which he believed that they are the earlier or the Aboriginal population. Then we have those of Mokun origin from Lankan that came much later that make up the Rom people. We also have linguistic works by Greenberg, Ballard. Then we have a lot of work done by Blench. We have so many of them here. Well, now we also have historical writings on the Just Plateau. The earliest ones are among those of Johnston, Adele. These two writers focus more on the Sokoto Caliphate, so they barely mention the Just Plateau in some places. John Hawkins talked about economic history of West Africa. He also mentioned the Just Plateau a few times in his work. However, these works also seem to rely on the earlier works carried out, especially the 20th century writings, which also still emphasize the people living in the hills in isolation. Then we also have a number of scholars towards the end of the 20th century. Among them are Ali, John Agee, Gonyok, and Morrison. This group of scholars came up with new perspectives. They tried to argue that the peopling of the Just Plateau was not sudden, and it was not as recent as these earlier writings were making it to look. For example, the Mogavul are not completely from Borno, rather they are a mixture of autochthones with later immigrants in the area. Also, this group of scholars argued that the peoples of the Just Plateau were not actually living in isolation as it is claimed, because the people interrelated through marriages, through trade, and through many ways. There are so many evidence of that. So the people were, as a result of this relationship, there are cases whereby they made alliances among themselves, and through that they were able to resist the jihadists that were coming from Bauchi, and they were able to maintain their independence, except maybe area like the Indri area and Kanam that eventually fell to the Bauchi Emirate, but all other places maintained their independence. Then we also have archaeological works that were carried out on the Just Plateau. We have the early ones carried out by Fag, Yosopa, York, and these works was able to give a perspective about the early occupation of the area. However, the problem of the Just Plateau, it didn't extend to other areas, and at that period, the research was haphazardly done, so they missed a lot of information. After their work, not much was done until from the early 80s in the Ron area, whereby we have works where Professor Mangut, Joseph Mangut, Benedicta Mangut were able to begin archaeological works in the Ron area. They are the ones to begin. After that, a number of research have been carried out. I applied in my study as follows. Of course, it has to do with documentation of oral tradition, mostly migration histories, then archaeological survey involving traversing and GIS mapping. Excavations were carried out in 3 places, that's Darfur, Lankan, and Fair. Then, of course, analysis of retrieved materials, and then ethnography was carried out in a number of places. Now, talking about the results about, firstly with the collection of oral histories, the map to the left here was initially made by Morrison, 1976. It has been drawn by me, and from this shows the migration histories of how many groups on the Just Plateau arrived, and you can see the earliest date you have here is the 17th century, 1600 AD. That's the earliest date. And for the Ron, you can see this is where the Ron came from. He mentioned from Das Hills in Bauchi, southern Bauchi, coming to Just Plateau. They settled at Fair, then to Bokos. This is his own account. Now, from the study carried out on the field myself, it has been able to confirm some of this, and it disagrees with some of these accounts. The first is that of the fair. The fair here from the field work carried out, traditions collected. They, of course, they identified Borno region, settled somewhere in southern, in Bauchi, but they didn't mention specifically the name of the place. Then when they arrived in Plateau, this was where they settled in Kiankiang. Then they moved from there, they moved to Fair. That's the account of the Fair people. Now, in the case of those, the Mupun of Lanka, they also identified, they said they came from the Borno region. They also temporarily settled in Bauchi before coming into the Just Plateau. On arriving in the Just Plateau, there are a number of places that they settled that due to time, I'm not going to mention them in detail. Then the run now from the study, from the traditions collected in Roland, now they don't seem to, the only place they mention outside the Just Plateau where they originated from is southern Bauchi, particularly that's here. This was where they mentioned that they came from, and from there they settled at Fair. From Fair now, they moved to Lankan and then to Run area. When they got to Run area, they settled here at Fire Room. This is just one account. We have several versions because for some disagree. They said they didn't follow this from here. They said from Fair, they moved straight to Run area. And from the Run area, again, it's believed from the various traditions collected that it was from here, Fire Room, where they all dispersed to other parts of Run land. Now, one account in the case of the Dafo people, the run of Dafo from Fire Room, they moved to Manguna and then to Dafo. Some other groups mentioned that they came straight to Dafo. So you can see there are various versions on their migration histories. The shortcomings of the early writings, especially by 23rd century writers, is that they just pick up one account and make it stand for all the various groups. They didn't look at the variations in these traditions. Now, in these three places, the first is Fair, and from Fair you can see this is a hill complex stretching over 31 kilometers, and Fair is just located here. Now, within Fair, a number of places were identified with the support of oral histories. Of course, a number of clans were identified here. They are all spread here. However, the tradition collected varied a little bit from an earlier account collected by a historian in 2004, the person of Saleh Lahore, which he identified 5 major clans in Fair, which are the Sharam, Yadu, Nandus, Nanhe, Dafwai. However, from this my study, one of these names mentioned was not mentioned here, and a number of places have been identified like this was not mentioned in his earlier work. However, on some of this, on most of the accounts agree, they both agree. Now, this place pointed by the arrow is believed to be where the Run people actually. This is a distribution of features on that same place where the Run people settled here. These are the various features identified. And this another settlement close to this that was also surveyed. Then going to Lankan now, at Lankan, 2 hill settlements were identified here, which is Asa Hill and then Namvung Hill. Still from traditions, Namvung Hill was identified as where the Run people settled, and this is where the exact place that they are believed to have settled, and other features here that have been identified on the hill. Then coming to Dafo 2, there are several hilltop settlements identified here. Now, the ones indicated by these white arrows were the ones identified by Joseph and Benedicta Mangut in the early 80s. There are 9 in number. Then in 2012, 11, 12, 2 additional ones were identified by myself because of my master's dissertation research. Then 9 additional ones were identified in the course of this my PhD research in the year 2015, between the year 2015 and present. Now, these are some of the places. However, among all these hilltops identified, this was selected, this particular one that was selected for excavation. The reason why it was selected was because it has been identified, as is likely to have evidence of pre-Chadic groups here. Now, there's something that I also skipped in the discussing the migration histories of particularly of the Dafo people on how they arrived. Now, and in Dafo, from their traditions, only 7 clans have been identified to be the groups that actually migrated from land of the Mupun, that's Lanka. There are some other groups that their origin could not be determined from their tradition. One of is this, the people interviewed mentioned that when they arrived, they met this hill already occupied and abandoned. Then also these new ones indicated by these red arrows that have been identified, as you can see, they do not even have names. The present day Dafo people were interviewed and they said they have no idea of the people that live there. And the implication of this is that on arrival of the group from the group from open land, there were already existing population here. And also, even after they arrived, there are some other groups that came and joined them here. And this has also been confirmed from the survey analysis was done of the features across these hills actually interrelated, and they seem to share common origin. Now, for the hill that was identified for excavation, this is the spatial distribution of features. We have compounds here, indicated here, and they have clusters of house foundations within them. And we have other features here like ritual area, animal pen, rock columns, ceremonial centers, and so on. Now, a comparative analysis of the features from the 3 locations, that's Dafo, Lankan, and Fer, was made, and it showed similarity. Yes, for the clusters of house foundation, they are present in the 3 locations. Then we have the courtyard, or a general meeting place or ceremonial area. That's what is served. It appears in the 3 places. Then we also have sitting arrangement where elders met. They start to discuss. Have ritual areas. In the case of this, is a rock shelter where they met. They do circumcision rituals here. Then in other places, we actually have huts in the 3 locations. Now we have some features also that are common to 2. We have like this is a burial, a special kind of burial. Is common to Lankan and Fer. And here, this is a grave whereby chiefs, deceased chiefs, are buried here, and the subsequent ones that died are buried in this same place. So when the next chief dies, the grave is opened and the remains of the previous ones where the people occupied. Then we also have some features that are unique to some of the places, like a millet thrashing area is unique only to Fer, and a pond that is unique to Dafo. Now, excavations carried out at Fer here is the entrance of the rock shelter that was excavated, and this was the excavation done. A number of features. This is the animal jaw that was identified at this point. A number of findings were finds that we'll discuss later. Then this is a stratigraphy. You can see it has a very clear stratigraphy. There's no intrusion except there's just here where a banana stump appeared. And radiocarbon sample got from here was around 70 cm, and it's around this point on this top area here. Then at Lankan also is an open area. An open area was excavated at the top which exposed a house foundation. As the excavation proceeded, at the lower level, another house foundation was exposed, implying that there were some settlers, and then later another group of settlers established their settlements at the top. you know, it could mean two things: either the earlier occupants abandoned it and left, or it could also mean those that established their settlement at the top were still the same people with the earlier ones that abandoned that. Then this is the stratigraphy. Also, it clearly shows this. However, there was a boulder that intruded in the process of excavation, which is here. And samples, 2 radiocarbon samples were taken from 60 cm depth, somewhere around here. And then at 40 cm also, charcoal sample was taken for dating. Then the last place, which is Dafo, here is the base of this large boulder that formed a shelter that was excavated here. The person stretching hand here is a colleague of mine, Okopi, that assisted me in the excavation. From the beginning of the excavation, you know, a cooking area, a hearth was exposed here with ash and charcoal spread all over the place. Then at a lower level again, something was exposed here, was more of stones laid on the ground to form more of like a stone tiling to level the ground, and so on. So a number of features, finds too were identified, were retrieved. Now this is stratigraphy. The stratigraphy shows that there was a sort of intrusion from this side, from the western wall, and here. However, from the eastern wall and the southern wall, it seemed undisturbed. And a radiocarbon sample was taken from at the depth of 1 meter, somewhere around here, the undisturbed section. Now, no dates were gotten for the upper levels. Now, these are the radiocarbon dates that were got for Fair, which of course is the first place, the earlier place that they are believed to have settled. I can see the dates correlated, it gives an earlier date. And then followed by Lankan. Here, Lankan 2 radiocarbon dates were gotten here at 60 centimeter depth, which gave this date, the 13th century. And at 40 centimeters, it gave very recent date. Then at Dafo, we have this date. It seems Dafo and Lankan are contemporaneous. And from the traditions collected, they also mentioned that their stay at Lankan was temporary. It was more, Lankan was more of a stopover before they moved. So it means they didn't really spend much time here before they continued their journey. Now, from the finds retrieved also, we have tobacco pipes, pieces of tobacco pipes that were found in the 3 locations. We have lithic materials as stone, materials made of stones. Then we have animal remains. Then of course we have some finds that are unique, that are found they are unique to some of these places. We have carnelian seed. Then this is an unidentified plant and seed. We have this is iron slag. Then pottery. These are some of the materials recovered from these places. Then a look at the pottery also. We have a unique pottery, and we try to compare them in the 3 sites. We have burnished that are found in the 3 locations. We have grooves also found. We have punctates. They are common to the 3 locations. Then we have horizontal incisions, string rollets. Then we have cord wrapped rollets, and then square grids. These are common to the 3 locations. However, there are some that are unique to 2 locations. That's Dafo and Lankan. We have this, which is folded strip roulette. We have knotted strip and plated fiber. Then we have some also that are common to Lankan and Fair. We have thumb impression, boss, corrugated, angular punctate, and then alternate twisted cord roulette. Then there are some decorations that are unique to each of the locations. We have a wavy line, carved impression. We have also carved, which is, it confirms connection. It confirms connection between the 3 locations. Why these that are unique to these places, it also indicates how differently the people adapted to their new environment. Then vessels recovered, also a reconstruction was done. We have cooking vessels, We have brewing jars. There are a number of them that, yes, I forgot to indicate there. We have jugs. This is more of a jug rather. Then we have, this is a processing bowl. This is a processing bowl. This is a serving bowl. Yes, I missed out some of the classes of vessels here. Now, also, fabric analysis was done of the materials. That's to study them to see whether there was some of these materials, the pottery, were they transported from some of these locations, and from the mineral content of the pottery from Fair, and therefore it shows a kind of similarity, and that of Lankan shows it differs a little bit. And this, of course, confirms with the pottery, the ceramics analyzed, because unlike Dafo and Fair, whereby it shows at the bottom, at the earlier phases of the occupation, we have very crude pottery with very few decoration. With most of them are not decorated, most of them are eroded. But in the case of Lanka, their pottery, it seemed at the early phase of the occupation, they had achieved cultural sophistication, that they have very complex decorations, and they have a number of them that are unique to the place in a way. So this analysis, in a way, it's supplemented some of the information that we got. Ethnography was also carried out just to understand how some of those pottery were made, and these are some of the processes they go through in making their vessels here. And these are the ones that are currently in use. This is a brewing jar, storage jar. We have these are cooking pots. Yeah, these are small. This is more of a jug, and so on. So now, coming to some of the research questions that were raised from the beginning of the study, it was necessary to reflect on these questions where some of these questions really answered. Where did the run come from? Now, this study has been able to confirm that, yes, there was population movement from Fair to Lanka and then to Darfur. However, there were also earlier populations in the area. Some of them that have been identified include the Dares, that even from tradition, they are believed not to have come from anywhere, that they came from the ground. Of course, even if there's anything to come by, at least the Dares have been identified, and from linguistic evidence, from this linguistic studies, it shows that some of this Dares group are actually not Chadic. From the study, even from their language, from some elements found in raw language indicates that they are Benue Congo elements, which confirms that the Dares are more likely to be Benue Congo speakers that populated the Rhone area and most part of the Just Plateau before the Chadic group came in the 17th century upwards, which they were more in number and they had better horses and they were able to overrun a number of places and then mix up with the population. Then now also, it has also confirmed that there was population movement from these places. However, the migration was not unidirectional or as simplistic as most of these early writings or these traditions make it to look, like they just move from point A to point B and point C. That's all. There are different variations on how they move. Like, for example, where excavations were carried out at Dafo, the people, descendants of the occupants of Dai, claim that they didn't come from Lanka. They gave a different direction that they came from. When they are coming, they didn't take some of those routes that were claimed by most groups, that they took an alternative route. And it also shows that there were different layers of occupation. Even the excavation confirms that, because most excavation carried out in raw land, you discover that you see different occupational levels. Maybe at the upper level, you expose a house foundation. When you go down, you expose another one. You can expose up to 3 different house foundations, indicating that there are different layers of occupation. That means people came to those places at different times and from different directions. And that is very important also in this study. Then, when did this migration take place? Talking of the Chadic migrations, the migrations from the Chadi migration from the 15th century, because from the happenings in the area, we know that the empire itself only started expansion, wars of expansions from the 13th century. So population movement, it was from that period that populations, they started expelling population from that area to southwards. And it will take time before these people, it took time before these people arrived at Just Plateau. Some of them stopped at different places, southern Bauchi, they spent a lot of time there before moving. So it's unlikely for them to have arrived before the 15th century. So, and the radiocarbon dates confirm that, because we have the date at Fair gave the 9th century, as early as the 9th century, which even predates the period of expansion of the empire. So it confirms that actually people existed in the Just Plateau before the arrival of these groups from the Chad Basin. Then why did they leave their former places? These are some of the questions that have also been answered, because we, of course, as a result of political instability over there, as different rulers emerged from the time of especially from the time of Idris Aloma from around the 15th century, whereby he even hired Turkish muskets to help him in fighting, to quelling resistance. That led to the expulsion of a lot of population from that area southwards. And of course, it would have taken a lot of time before they got to the some of them got to the Just Plateau. Now, why did they choose present-day land? And from the tradition, it was mentioned that at Fair, it was so hilly, they didn't have enough space for farming.
Can you hear me? Sorry for disturbing you.
Okay, thank you.
5 minutes.
They didn't have place to farm, so they needed. How many minutes, please?
5.
Okay, please. You said how many minutes?
5.
5 minutes. Thank you. I'll wrap up immediately. Okay. Now, from there, why did they choose this place? Because from while they were at Fair, they expanded in population. They needed more space for grazing and for farming. And as they moved to Lankan, they realized that even there were so many groups that they had to contend with. So they spent just a little time before they moved to Ronland. And on arriving in Ronland, they realized that there was so much open field where they could graze, they could cultivate. And from there, they expanded to dominate the place. Now, also another question is, was Ronland line unoccupied until the 17th century? The answer is no, because when they arrived, they met the Benue Congo groups. We've mentioned the Dares population were there. We also have the Nyam that are found in Bokos area that were there before the arrival of the group from Moponland. And there could also be several other groups. Some of these groups were pushed out southwards towards Kulere area, and some of them remained. And what happened is that there was a fusion. The Chadi groups that came actually fused with the earlier groups, confirmed that there are Benue Congo elements in the Ron language, which confirms this. Then also, and what happened to the earlier population? This has already been answered. They were pushed, and it led. So in a way, the Ron are actually a hybrid of two people of two different origins, those of Benue Congo origin and their aborigines, and then later migrants that came that fused and formed a new identity known as the Ron today. So from this study now, the gap in the history of the place is now beginning to be filled. Now we have more dates from Fair. We have 8th to 10th century, we have 13th, and this. However, there's a need for more study with time. As more of this research is being done, we'll be able to have dates. We also have a recent date. I mentioned earlier, there's a project going on by the Department of Archaeology and Heritage Studies here in University of Jos in Ron area, particularly Butura and Fire Room. A new date has also been got from Fire Room. That date also agrees with this, is the 13th century, and very soon we'll have more findings that will be shared possibly in forum like this about our ongoing work in the area. So this study has been able to actually close the huge gap in the history of the Just Plateau in a way, and course, it was mentioned that the migration was triggered by a number of factors, and this has, led to, increase in population, led to disputes, and of course, movement of people and so on. And these are some of the issues I've already discussed here. So I have to be thankful to a number of persons here. First of all, Professor Joseph Mangut and Menita Mangut, who, of course, are my parents, and their sacrifice in the archaeology of Run Land. They've done so much. They've used their personal income to open up the place, and upcoming researchers like us are benefiting from what they started. Then Professor Joe Aleru, was my supervisor in the course of my PhD. We have mentors too, Akin Ogundiran. Here we have Usman Arubdesi, who also assisted me with 2 videos. Thank you to them, and IFRA for giving this platform. Also, I must mention Mamala Didaurun, who has been my host at Lanka. She unfortunately passed away yesterday. May her soul rest in peace. Thank you also to all listeners for taking your time to sit down and listen to my work. Thank you.
Thank you, Macham. Well done. Congratulations, and thank you for the nice words at the end. Thank you. Really, congratulations. It's like I've learned a lot, obviously. As you know, I'm very interested in the history of Borno, and I would believe that everything started in Borno forever, So no, really, thank you for the paper. I really appreciated it. Actually, just it's about the conversation that we're having here, IFRA, about the importance of archaeology for the better understanding of Nigerian history. So thank you. Thanks a lot, really. Can I open the floor to questions, please? Please raise your hand, please, if you don't mind. Let me just put a list of participants so that we can see all of you. Since I call all of you, who has a question?
You can raise your hand on the Zoom application.
I can see there's one hand from Mr. Kimbowale Akintayo, please.
All right. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you, Macham, for the presentation. I couldn't attend your defense, but at least I guess probably this was what you presented to when you were defending your thesis.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll initially ask some questions, but when you were discussing, I got the responses to the questions I had in mind. But one question I would like to ask is there a disparity between what you're able to find out eventually and based on the historical records? I got lost during the course of your presentation where you were showing this migration routes from different people, and the earliest the migration route we're talking about is the same with applies to this run where you carried out the research, because I saw that the date there is 18th century, and you're trying to fill the gap from 25 BC to 17th century. So what is there really a disparity? I know there's a disparity if the migration route based on historical records. So what can you say to this, between the historical records about the dates given there and the finds, the date you got when you visited those sites? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I respond immediately?
Please do so. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, there's actually disparity because from the historical records they mentioned the earliest date is 16th century, as you mentioned. And from the dates provided, it clearly shows that it goes far beyond that, and even going by history of happenings in the Lake Chad basin, of course, is recorded in detail. So much has been done about the Sefawa Empire there at that period, and that period, the dates got from this work, you can see at fair, it's given as early as the 9th century. which was the period that even the wars of expansion had not started at Borno there then. Also, and there's a disparity in the traditions because, you know, especially in the account provided by Mick, I think, and also Ames and Matthews, they mentioned that the run, in fact, they mentioned that the run came from Gobir in northern Nigeria. And from there, they came, when they arrived in Plateau, they settled at Gindri before moving to Fair, then Lanka, and then Run area. However, now the Fiam people of Gindri, they are Benue Congo speakers, while the Run are Chadic speakers. So you can see they don't seem to share the same, they don't seem to share common origin. That's one. And also it seemed that the Fiam of Gindri actually came from those places, but where the meeting point of the Run and the Fair was at Fair. I'm sorry, the meeting point of the Fiam and the Ren, and the Run was at Fair, the first place investigated. They all met there, so they shared a lot in common. So we can say in a way they shared part of their history, but their earlier history was not shared together. So that was the only place that brought them together. So you can see they missed that out because even from Run tradition, they don't seem to mention anywhere. The only place they mention outside the Just Plateau is Southern Bauchi, which is Das. And Professor Joseph Mangut has done, and both Manguts, the senior Manguts, have done preliminary work also at Das. They tried to survey the place to compare, to see similarity between the place at Das and then Run area. So to answer your question, actually there's disparity in the historical traditions, and the date has also confirmed that. Thank you.
Thank you for your very thorough answer. Now I'm going to take two questions, one from Ms. Regina Crisobodo and the second one from Dr. Borje Farouk, please. Ms. Regina, please.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody, and good evening, Dr. Macham. That's an amazing archaeological. I'm so grateful because I grew up as a student of history. I mean, what I mean is I never read history, but I had a father that loved telling us story about our origin. I happen to be from the Run tribe in Plateau State. So I've asked questions, and I think today has afforded me the opportunity to get some of the questions I've asked filled up. So thank you so much. But also this story that my father died when he was almost 85 years. So he had a lot of stories, and I could some of the places, the settlements he mentioned, actually some of the places he actually mentioned, and I think we share some languages up till today, especially in Fair. But there is this, he told us when we were growing up, I think I saw my elder brother, I had to ask him to join. There was this Borno connection. I didn't hear you talk about that because I happened to have listened from the onset. And there was this also the connection of Bogoba. Yes, I learned that we had some relationships with the Bogobiri. That's just the story I recall. And so my question is this: is there really any findings, or you did not think about finding out some of the Borno part of it and the Sokoto Gobrawa area, so that it was just a legend that we should not consider as possibilities? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Dr. Borje Farouk, please, to ask this question as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc, for the presentation, and I want to confess that it's a fantastic presentation. My question is very simple and direct. What I'm trying to ask about is that what is the role of the Nok culture in the migration and settlement of the Run and other groups, the central part of Nigeria? I've read about the major role played by the Lake Chad on the settlement around the Borno, but what is the role, or what are the roles of Nok culture in the settlement and migration of the major groups within this area? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for these very interesting questions. Let me start with the first from Regina Chris. Yes, Yeah, actually, the focus of my work is more of on internal migration because I had to limit the scope because it's just a PhD work. I'm hoping that I'll expand the scope in my postdoc at my postdoctoral level. Now for the Gobir connection with Gobir, actually from my study of literature particularly, I'm basing more on literature now. And what I see is that it's more of those from FIEM that seem to there seem to be an agreement on their connection with Gobir, but since it's only literature, it means there are many gray areas in that with respect to that connection. However, connection to the Borno is more clearly defined. The moment you go to FAIR, whoever you interview, where do you come from? The first place they mention is Borno. However, the problem with that again is that these traditions fail to clearly state, the migration routes that they followed, where were the places, the routes where they followed, it clearly, this information is missing. And in migration, there are some key important things that, make it more of kind of like the first is more of those that led the migrations. You should hear names that were led by so person. In the case of the run of Darfur, they'll mention that yes, Mangai was the person that led us from Mupon land to Darfur. This kind of information, is missing. However, it's established that there was, and even from now the materials got. Yes, let me talk about the materials found. The pottery. Some of the pottery, I'm in a way familiar with Yoruba pottery. When I compare Yoruba pottery with the pottery I found from they are clearly different from their morphology, from their decorative motifs. And the pottery in this area, particularly Just Plateau, most of parts of Just Plateau, they seem to agree with pottery from the Lake Chad Basin, from the work done by Kona. Kona and the Germans have done some work, archaeological works in the Lake Chad Basin, and there's a striking similarity between their pottery and potteries found at Fair, Lanka, and even Darfur. So the materials also shows that connection between the places. But as I said, I'm hoping that the scope of this the scope will be expanded in future research, and we're looking forward to hopefully we get grants to cover the places. The department here is that we are doing our best. This department has been sponsoring some research within this area. It's hopeful that by the time we expand the scope, we'll need more funding and we'll be able to get more information. I hope my answer is helpful. Then for the second questions from Dr. Farouk, yes, connection between Enoch and the Just Plateau. One of the key features of the Enoch culture is figurine. These figurines. Now, unfortunately, these figurines have not been found on the Just Plateau, and the location of actually the Just Plateau is more of at this western edge. It's at the western edge of the plateau. These figurines have not been found. I think only one was found. It was not found in stratified context, somewhere close to Panshim, Metumbi. It was just found. So the provenance could not be established. So this key indicator of the Nok culture is missing. However, other features are common, like a comparison has been made about with the furnaces, Nok furnaces with Birom furnaces. They have a kind of similarities. Then also it is believed that by virtue of proximity, of course, there will have been population movement from the Just Plateau going downhill, depending on the situation downhill between those places. So it's possible that some of the population here on the Just Plateau could have link to the Nok culture, but that has not been fully established. There are some research that have been going on in the Nok Valley by the Germans, and part of their plans was to link that research to the Just Plateau. Unfortunately, the research had to stop. It's hopeful that in future research, more information will be found and we'll be able to have, a more solid ground on that issue. Thank you. I just hope that I've been able to give a satisfactory answer.
Thank you, Macham. May I take, we've got 3 hands up. Can I take the 3 next questions, please? So first, Mrs. and Mr. Abiola Ibirogba, then Manko Nwazigwe, and then Tunde Babadola, please.
Thank you, Dr. Macham, for that amazing presentation. My question actually relates to the fact that many migration stories and many migration histories that we have read actually talk about a kind of one-way movement, talking about even for international migrations and internal migrations, they only talk about one-way movement. And I'm happy that your research actually mentioned, your presentation actually mentioned the fact that there might be return migrations and movements. It's not just one way. So I'm wondering what archaeological signatures you saw on the work that you did that made you come to that realization or made you come to that conclusion. That's my question.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, for archaeological signature, you know, it's more of a comparison was made. If you remember from the features, I was able to I tried to compare the features, archaeological features at Lankan Fair and the 3 locations. A number of them show similarity, about 5 of them show similarity. Then we have some that are unique to only 2, either unique to Fair and Lankan, and then or Dafo and this. So it clearly shows that, of course, even the data confirms what you mentioned about this issue of unidirectional. It shows that there are some features, cultural features that are unique to some of these places. And who knows, it could be the voices of the other population that is speaking there. We never can tell. You know, that's one of the ways. Also from the materials, from the archaeological materials also recovered, because see, from the pottery too, you will see that there are some that are similar across the 3 locations. And most of this pottery, when you go back to study of pottery is done, you know, in fact, it's unique, it's common not just to the Just Plateau, it spreads out even to the Lake Chad and even Burkina Faso and parts of Cameroon. Some of those decorations are common to these places. So it shows some of these things that they share in common. However, there are some also decorations that are unique. Common to, I've noticed like some of the decorations I showed, like corrugated, like more of ridges. It's common. There are some cultural, should I say, some features that are shared by Fair and Lankan that are completely missing in land. These kind of findings are beginning to trigger more questions that hopefully future research will be able to answer. But from the little we know, it clearly shows that, of course, there was actually cultural connections between the 3 locations. And of course, there are some uniqueness about each of these places, which of course shows how differently these places are adapted to their new environment. Because even as they move from point A to point B, definitely they will lose some elements of their culture. It's normal. And these are as a result of some of the new challenges posed by their new environment. They have to adapt to new circumstances there, and some may be irrelevant to them in their former places, and they will have to drop them. So these are some of the possibilities. Thank you for this very interesting questions.
Let's take 2 questions in a row if you don't mind, Macham, now. Let's ask Manko Nwazigwe and
thank you, Dr.
Babadola, please.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
Please go, Mr. Manko.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Macham. I think you tried to cover a lot of gaps because I'm a professional historian, and we feel that the Just Plateau is really a closed area of investigation when you're not talking about micro studies. And your archaeological work seem to have, exposed a lot of finds that, people need to, to develop on. However, on the issue of migration, I'm worried about your, unilateral trajectory, which only posits at the Borno, at the Chadian zone, because you find that at the period of your study, you have the Kwararafa, the Jukin Kingdom, extending their influence as far as Kano, and then down south to Igbo of southeast, to Igbo of Cross River Zone, what we actually call South Igbo group or Cross River Igbo group, Arochukwu side, all those areas, Abakaliki, they also extended to that point. So I don't know if it is possible for you to look at the trajectory, the historical trajectory of the plateau area without the concurrent effect of Kwararafa influence when you're talking, when you're talking in terms of historical as well as linguistic, character of the environment. That's my observation and question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interesting observation and question.
Let's ask Prof. Tunde, please. Let's ask Prof. Tunde Balola 2 questions. Otherwise, we won't have time to ask the participants their questions because we need to finish in 20 minutes.
Thank you so much, Macham, for that very interesting presentation. I am so excited and I love every part of the presentation. I have tons of questions for you, but of course we can talk about this some other time. I think I'm just going to be straight to the point, just to say 1 or 2 of the questions. Number 1 has to do with Ajami. I noticed that you mentioned Ajami as one of the sources, I believe, that you consulted or that are available for that area. I know that Professor Falon Ngom of Boston University has done a lot on Ajami as one of African literature or African languages or something like that. But the question is, do you think Ajami is useful in understanding archaeological context in the area where you're working? Because you mentioned it, and thereafter, the first time you mentioned it, I didn't hear anything about it again. Of course, I don't know much about the manuscript or the writing, but I just want to hear from you if you think it will actually be a kind of a useful sources of the archaeological interpretation. Number 1. The number 2, very quickly, I was going to ask if you are able to, or if you have any form of data on spatial analysis at this site. So were you able to delineate domestic space from industrial space, from ritual space in all of these sites, and how are they related? And then lastly, it has to do with the similarities in material culture from these 3 sites. But my question is, does that similarity point at a cyclical migration or just one-time movement from one site to another site, or it was a kind of a cyclical thing? They go away and they come back, or what do you have from your studies? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the beautiful questions also. So let me go to the first question, which has to do with Kwararafa influence. Yes, it's perfectly true that Kwararafa influence there was Kwararafa influence on the Just Plateau. Also, from the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned about the Benue Congo group also that dominates the northern part of groups, particularly the Benue Congo, especially like the Birom, the Anaguta, and some of them were pushed. From some of the literature, it was mentioned that they were pushed as a result of Kwararafa influence into that area. And they too, as a result, when they arrived, they also pushed away some groups that moved down to southern part of Kaduna and so on. So yes, Kwararafa influence is also evident on the Just Plateau. Thank you for that observation. I try to just focus more on Fer and Lankan because of it's pointing so much to the Borno region, but of course in the expanded, like in the thesis, where is also time factor also contributed in not capturing some of these things, but it influenced it. Apart from the Birom, we also have Kwararafa influence among some of the groups on the Just Plateau, even from their attire, from some of the, like the Gumai, you can see some of the attire that they wear is similar to those of the Jukun. You know, that one also is there. So thank you so much for that. Then for Dr. Babalola, yes, you know, it's a script, it's a source developed by the Bauchi Emirate particularly. However, its relevance in this study is very little because what most of the things, you know, what the focus of their writings is more of the successes of how they carried out their jihad campaigns to different places, successes of the various emirs of the emirate. That's what they record. So the only information that we're able to get from there is more of where they seem to mention the Just Plateau is like they met stiff resistance and most of those campaigns failed. So that's the scanty information. So however, that also has an implication also on the occupational history of the area because, you know, most literature, they seem to, you know, they mention the issue of isolation and resistance mostly. That's what they capture mostly in their work as mentioned in the earlier, in my when I was discussing my literature. You know, so in a way, the impact, the influence of the jihadists coming from those places might actually have forced some people into the hill, you know, to stay uphill where they feel more secure to be able to defend themselves. So that is also equally an important information from the Ajami script. But apart from that, not much is known about it, you know, and you know the information is sketchy. So I hope that is helpful. Then for spatial analysis, yes, spatial analysis was carried out, you know, but it's just more of a simple spatial analysis. Like for example, therefore, when all the features, when the features were surveyed and a map was generated, you know, there's a kind of spatial analysis you do using a GIS spatial analysis more of to generate a heat map. From that heat map, you could see which of the hills have high concentration of features. So I know higher concentration of features indicates concentration of activities there. You know, so that was helpful in the choice because from the heat map generated, the sites, the hill selected at Dafo, which is Dai, showed high concentration of features in addition to one other, which is Hurum, which was the earlier place that they settled before moving to other places. That was helpful, but you know, sometimes you don't also have to rely on one mode of analysis. You also have to back it up with other information like the oral tradition, who were the people that lived here. Also, that was also a determining factor in the choice of where to excavate. Then on similarities between features, please can you remind me? I seem to have missed that point to your question, please, Dr. Babalola, on these similarities of features. I seem to have.
I asked if there is you mentioned earlier that there are some similarities in the material culture from these three sites. Then my question was that does those similarities translate to cyclical migration or just one-time migration from one site to another, or is it the same set of people moving from one site to the other, or different set of people occupying each of these sites at different points in time?
Thank you very much. Yes, one thing about similarity also, it can point to another issue. It might not necessarily mean migration. That's another angle to it. It could also mean, you know, ideas. They shared ideas within the area. It could also mean that, however, that's the advantage of combining, you know, multiple sources. You know, in addition to that, you already have oral histories pointing to that. It also indicates connection, and so like having similarity in features is more of a way of confirming oral sources. Then also, as I mentioned earlier, yes. From the tradition, I'm relying so much also on tradition because, you know, they said they moved there, but they also, I know there are some also rituals that the people of Rom people still go to those places to do, even as maybe as in the last 10 years or so. You know, I know that there are some celebrations that take place in Lankan, Mupuland, that people from Ronland go there to celebrate. They say they are, let them go back to their former home and celebrate, you know. And even Fair Day, they do Fair Day every year. And from information I got, that the people of Fair say that every year they do Fair Day, they get visitors from parts of Ronland that they come. And whenever they come, the first place they go to is Kandafwa, where excavation was carried out. They identify that place as their ancestral home. So they first of all go there to do a number of rituals before they go and join this ceremony. Yes, so but however, there's no case of return migration, like people deciding to go back to their former home. No, because there's a reason why they left those places. The need for space. They were choked up there. They needed free space. That was why they moved. So going back to that place would be like going back to their former problems. But identifying with those places that, yes, this is our home, that they go there to carry out rituals, is in a way confirms these traditions and from the similarities further. So that's the advantage of using multiple sources, you know, in corroborating all this. Thank you.
Thank you for your thorough answers. May I ask now Amos Matteau and Chiamaka Loretta, am I right? Loretta, and sorry, I can't see your full name. My apologies to them for not seeing the full name. Mrs. Chiamaka Loretta as well. So Mr. Amos Matteau and Mrs. Chiamaka Loretta, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Macham. Actually, the name is Amos Matteau, but I guess the voice you are hearing is that of Okopi. I have two questions. The first one is this, that having listened to your lecture, I want to ask, what implication does this migration history and study that you have taken has on the general peopling of central Nigeria? What implication does it have or has on the general peopling of central Nigeria? Then secondly, you try to give us some of the features, like the seating arrangement, the central places, and the rest of that, that were common to these groups, different groups. So I want to know, is there any culture material that is peculiar to the Rom people? Because what you say, we saw your chart and almost everything is similar. So is there anything that defines that is a signature of the Rom group? And then I maybe I didn't get you where you talked about the Chadic and non-Chadic group speakers. So you said you at some point you said something goes to show a common source of origin. So I don't know whether I was the one that didn't get you where. Are you not saying that the Chadic group and the non-Chadic group, they were coming from a similar origin? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Macham, for that interesting talk. So I would ask, my question is a simple one. You answered part of my question while answering Dr. Tunde's question. But then I was wondering if, probably I missed it along your discussion, but I was wondering if there are accounts of probably findings from your work that led to the migration and reoccupation of these sites, right? You mentioned that it's as a result of space or their need for space. But then do you think there's something like, say, environmental or climatic conditions, say famine, drought, that would have led to these people moving and then reoccupying, or another set of people reoccupying these spaces? Thank you.
Thank you very much for these beautiful questions. Let me start with Mr. Okopi. You know, Okopi has been part of this work also. Thank you. Then one, the implication of these migrations of central Nigeria. Yes, I mentioned from the beginning of my presentation that central Nigeria is heterogeneous, made up of several groups. And this has reflected because it means, there are several layers of occupation coming from different places. The work, the RUN project has really confirmed that, whereby you see abandonment, reoccupation, abandonment at several points. Then you can see elements of different cultures from the study of the language. You can see elements of non-Chadic elements in the Chadic language. You know, that's an implication of what? Fusion. I think it also goes to answer your third question before I come to the second question, whereby, you know, this, because it shows the implication of this, that it's not that they share common origin, no, because it shows that there were the earlier population is confirmed, you know, in the whole of the Just Plateau, you know, the earlier population were Benue, Congo, before these Chadic people came, you know, with better, they were more in population, they had better horses, and they overran some of these people, but, you know, they didn't just push them away. There was a period of cultural integration. Now, these two groups came together and kind of formed a new identity, you know, to the extent that some aspect of the earlier population were still retained, while those of the Chadic people were also retained. So it's more of a give and take kind of. So elements of the earlier culture were not completely lost, they were not wiped away. So it's like saying, I love this aspect of culture, let's maintain it. A perfect example is in Darfur or in the Rwanda area is masquerade costume. You know, most of the earlier population, the Benue, were pushed down the escarpment, you know, while some remain actually. But do you know that the Run group still rely on people at the southern escarpment for costume, for their masquerade costume? Because they are the ones that they still go down to those places to get their costume for their masquerade. Why? Because they still, so in essence, it shows that some aspect of the earlier population, the earlier culture was still retained. And these two fused to produce a completely new identity. That's why today, when you, in the case of the people of Fair and the people of Run, their language is similar. It's similar quite okay, but you may, it's in a way intelligible quite okay, but there's a difference. Some things have changed in the Run language compared to those of Fair. You know, when you are speaking, you know that yes, you could hear some things that are similar to Run, but some things have changed. So you can see the period of their, you know, the distance between them and Fair. And so here, now they had to imbibe some new culture to kind of, so it's more of a fusion that led to a more of something like more of a new identity, kind of. Now, to your second question about the common features, yes, there are some features that are also unique to the Run. But you know, actually, from this study, you know, if you look at the excavations carried out, that there is a need for future, maybe a wide-scale, large-scale excavation, more of horizontal excavation that will expose a whole settlement. From there, we'll be able to make more concrete inferences about that. So some of the findings, you know, most of the findings are similar to these three locations. However, it's just a few that are unique. Like in the case of pottery, one of it is is the chevron decoration. It's only unique to Darfur. I didn't find any at Lanka and Fair. So that's uniqueness. Then a fragmented cowrie shell was found in Darfur. None was found there in all these places. And I didn't seem to get any information about that cowrie shell because the people didn't mention cowrie shell as part of maybe their ritual objects, or perhaps it could also have been used as a currency. We don't know. But these are some of the unique things. But hopefully in future research, we'll begin to get more information, and I think we'll be able to answer more questions on the Run, on origin per se. Then to Chiamaka, yes, this environmental factor could also be a factor. This is where we also need the expertise of people like you know, whereby you go into the area of studying, maybe foraging, being an environmental archaeologist, you'll be able to get that information. I know in the course of my work also, I took sample for archaeobotanical research. However, the results are not yet out. Perhaps when this is out, we'll begin to have some information related to environmental changes and also on that. But for now, you know, there's no much information about that, but thank you for your wonderful contribution.
And I believe we have a last question, because you must be tired, Macham. I believe we have a last question from Mafulul Maram, please.
Hello. Hello.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Macham, that is a very, very a wonderful presentation on migration issues connecting parts of Ronland and then Fairlankang area. My contribution is just a little. It has to do with the issue raised by someone, I've forgotten the name, concerning the influences of the Kwararafa Empire. Yeah. Now, is a topic that interests me, and I think scholars like Palmer have written a little about it. But I think there are two things. The Kwararafa issue and the Jukun issue are two different things. Now, the first one is the Kwararafa issue. And from the little I've read, it's like it was more or less like a movement or a crusade, whereby it originated in a typical Jukun land and then spread to other areas. For example, yes, you said they have a little influence on the plateau, but most of their influence is concentrated on the lower part of plateau, not on the Just Plateau. Exactly. And that is why you find similarities in certain cultural attributes between them and the Gumai. And at the same time, the issue concerning the Jukun here in this context is reflected in the Tarok history. And thank God, I think Professor Jempu is also on this Zoom, so he's listening. Now, the Kwararafa spread from their homeland somewhere in Taraba, cutting towards the southern part of Plateau. I mean, I'm talking about areas where their signatures are dominant, moving to the Bauchi area, the Gombe, and as written in the Kano Chronicles, they reach up to Kano. That means they were just moving like, I'm sorry to compare them to the kind of banditry we're having today. They move from one place to another. When they capture that place, they conscript people they could find in that particular place and move. It's not been established that established that there was a feedback mechanism where anywhere the Kwararafa soldiers reach, they go back to where they come from. There wasn't that kind of thing. So it was more or less a kind of movement where they reach places, they conquer those places, they conscript people, they move forward. But the issue of Jukun influence was a later development after the collapse of the Kwararafa Empire, whereby people began to now move out of the homeland of the Jukun into some parts of Plateau and other areas. And I think that is what I've observed so far. So their influence that sometimes one could talk about is, in fact, up to even Ronland, if I may say, is the issue of the removal of skulls, which has been written, captured by the Manguts, and even your work, it's there. And I think if you go to some parts of Pangshin, it's there. But there is an undergraduate student or work in ABU Zaria by one Francis Chunyu that also showed some kind of that kind of practice in some parts of Jukun land that is also found on the plateau. So I think to some extent is it was more or less like a movement, not that they were like the jihad whereby they capture an area, they put one of their princes there as the king or the emir, and then they keep on moving. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was like just a kind of movement, a kind of a crusade movement, let me say. That's all I can contribute to that particular aspect of this presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope there are people that ask questions about Kwararafa. I hope this is helpful. Thank you so much, Maram, for that beautiful contribution.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, the history of Kwararafa is always a very interesting one. So thank you for this last question as well. Can I just take this moment just to say thank you to Macham Mangut for this amazing work. Again, I've learned a lot, and thank you also to all the people who asked questions. I must say, it's really impressive to also this very strong attendance, so thank you all. Let me just say that, for the last word, this is the last seminar, online research seminar, which Mrs. Jeffrey and I organized for IFRA-Nigeria. So that you want to say a word, maybe maybe.
Nothing special. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Macham, for this beautiful presentation. We are very glad to have all this session for the second series.
So thank you, thanks a lot for that. And really, as you can see in the chat as well, you got a lot of people thanking you and congratulating you. So again, well done for your PhD. Let us know when you're in Ibadan, okay? Let's celebrate again, okay? So well done, and thank you everyone. Wonderful attendance, and please be in touch, if you want to hear more about IFRA-Nigeria. So thank you, and I hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.